US President Donald Trump declared that Volodymyr Zelensky has no cards to play in a stinging rebuke after the Ukrainian president rejected his framework for peace. Trump slammed Zelensky on Wednesday for his comments that Ukraine wouldn't recognize Russian control of Crimea, calling the remarks very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia. As negotiators met for the latest round of talks in London, reports suggest the US proposal that was laid out had two key points in agreement with Moscow's stand. The first being Kyiv officially recognizing Crimea as Russian territory, and the second that Ukraine can never become a NATO member. Both seemed deal breakers when it came on the Ukrainian side. Listen in to what Donald Trump had to say. We move on and then discuss, are peace talks all but dead now?
I think Russia is ready, and a lot of people said Russia wanted to go for the whole thing. And I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, and I hope that Zelensky, I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far it's been harder, but that's okay.
All right, as always, the big questions on India Global. First up, will Donald Trump now walk away from these stalled Ukraine peace talks? Next, Zelensky's Crimea demand, is that really now becoming a deal breaker or a sticking point in these talks, the reason why they may actually fail? Next up, what's really stalling these talks? Remember, they've been on again, off again for almost over a month now with fresh reasons for delay. What's really stalling? What's the real reason? And lastly, what really happened as far as the rare earth deal is concerned? Remember, that was really supposed to be the big deal clincher about a month ago. A lot has changed since then, and we discuss just that. Alexander joining me to talk more on this, along with Mr. Joseph, to understand the impact of the latest that has unfolded. You are the former advisor to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Explain to us the significance of what just unfolded latest as far as the peace talks are concerned, because what the US side is saying is that some of the demands of Ukrainian president are essentially deal breakers.
Well, let's imagine that the United States proposed India to cede Kashmir and some other territories that China claims as theirs, with the aim to have a peace.
It's not the same, sir, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's not the same. It's a bilateral conflict. We don't entertain any third party. So there is no way you can draw a comparison, but go ahead, make your point.
Yes, it's the same thing because
make your point, sir. As I said, it's not the same.
According to international law, it's your territory. And there is a third party that is trying to get this from your country to the other country. If we're talking about Crimea, it was illegally annexed in 2014, and the international community did not recognize the illegal annexation of Crimea. And this should be as a policy, not just for Ukraine, not just for Europe, but the whole world. Otherwise, the Pandora box would be open. The second thing, I could not call this peace negotiations or peace proposal if Russia gets it all. Our territory, our neutral status, and many other things. In return, Ukraine gets nothing, neither security guarantees from the United States or membership in NATO or other things. So I don't think that we are breaking peace talks, but the Russians are not ready to have any concessions with regard to Ukraine.
Fair enough. I take all your points, but in the benefit of my viewers, I must put two things straight. One, I already clarified that comparisons with Kashmir are absolutely baseless, simply because the whole of Kashmir is India's territory. We do not entertain any third party. You do. You do entertain, and you want a third party to solve the problem. We are not going to allow that. So there is no comparison. Secondly, which brings me to ask you another question, sir, because we can go back and forth on that. The second question I want to ask you is that if Donald Trump or the Trump administration actually walks away from these peace talks, where does Ukraine really stand? Because what the Trump administration is saying is that Ukraine is in a very bad position as far as the war is concerned, and it cannot sustain any further.
Well, first of all, there are two parallel tracks. One, that Mr. Trump and his administration want to reset relations with Russia, whatever the results of the peace talks about the Russo-Ukrainian war. And second track is actually the talks between the Americans and Russians, and between Americans, Ukrainians, and Europeans. We have no choice but to fight back the Russians, because the Russians have maximalist goals of destroying Ukrainian statehood and subjugated Ukrainian nation. And unfortunately, we have many nations, and particularly European nations, who understand the threat from Russia to Europe in general, to Ukraine particularly, and they stepping up their support of Ukraine. So it will be unfortunate for Ukraine that the United States would side with the violator of the international law, with the countries that launch unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression against Ukraine. But we don't have other choice but to fight the Russians back.
Let's hear the other side of this as well. Edward Joseph, who's a political analyst and lecturer at Johns Hopkins, joins me to talk more of this. Sir, the other side to the conversations, the peace talks that have pretty much stalled when it comes to Russia-Ukraine, how do you see the demands being made by Ukrainian president, and how much of a deal breaker do you think they are in these talks?
First, good to be with you, the other guest, and of course your viewers. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to use the term other side. Honestly, trying my best, it's hard to see what is the other side here. Look, in addition to what you've heard from your previous guest, which sadly is completely factual. There's nothing that the previous guest said that anyone can really challenge. The basis for the deal that he characterizes is, as he says, I would like to provide another side, but I cannot. He is correct when he says
no, the other side I meant was, no, I wasn't saying the Russian side. My point was the other side to the fact that as things stand right now, the talks have all but stalled. Are we looking at a possibility of them opening again, or are we looking at the peace talks being now thrown into cold storage?
Well, again, I respectfully reference what the other guest was saying. There are no talks. These are not talks. There are no talks. The Trump administration would not go to London to have those talks with the Europeans and the Ukrainian side. They refused to go on that. They put a deal on the table that, I'm sorry to just simply repeat this, it's entirely one-sided. And I would only add 2 points here to what the other guest has said. I would add 2 other points. That it was the Russian side that rejected the Trump proposed ceasefire. So it's very important for your viewers to understand this, because the picture that is coming a little bit is that, well, you know, there's a peace offer on the table and Ukraine is being difficult. Wait a minute. It was Ukraine which accepted the Trump administration proposal for the ceasefire. And it was Russia which rejected that.
That's correct.
A fact.
That's absolutely correct.
And that's absolutely correct.
But,
and the only question here, really, there's only one important question at the moment, or the most important question, and that is, what will the Trump administration do now that Ukraine, which any country at its position, and I would point out here, it's very important to say, even if it were not President Zelensky, you would not have any other Ukrainian leader who would accept the terms proposed.
Okay, so Crimea is not a deal breaker.
Just please let me finish and then continue. But it's not as if there's some personal dynamics here that are interrupting, and that, oh, if only it weren't President Zelensky, but I could mention a name, but I won't, some other personalities in Ukraine, that it would be different. It would not be any different. Those individuals, also constrained by Ukraine's constitution, also constrained by the record of Russia, and also constrained by the public opinion. Ultimately, it's the citizens of Ukraine that will have the final say on this, and they reject this type of approach. Please.
All right. Very quickly, sir, because I'm really out of time, which is that, do you expect this war to then continue, or do you expect Europe to do the heavy lifting? Mr. Alexander, to you first. Very quickly.
Well, first of all, there is no reason to believe that Russia is going to stop this war, and certainly we are not in a position to give up protecting our sovereignty and our national identity. So we will fight Russians back, and with the support of our European partners, we will be able to do that.
Okay. So, Joseph, to you, very quickly, sir.
Yes, as I said, the only or the most important question here is what will the Trump administration do with these facts? Will it, as it did before, cut off intelligence assistance? Will it cut off military assistance to Ukraine? So we will see. And I would tell you from my vantage point here in Washington, the answer to that is not so clear at the moment. Trump is unpredictable, but that is really the key question is what now? The ball is really now in the American court.
Okay.
And it's the question is what will President Trump do now that this one-sided approach is clearly not going to work? Please.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for dissecting a complex story, and we're going to keep coming back to it as things progress.